The battlefield was silent now. Smoke curled in the air, rising from the wreckage of destroyed ships and fallen soldiers. Sergeant James Carter moved carefully, his pulse steady but alert. His team had been ambushed, scattered across this desolate alien moon. Now he was alone. The war between humans and the Zarelian Dominion had raged for years, and Carter had seen more than his fair share of battles. The Zarelians were ruthless, their empire vast and merciless. But today's mission had gone horribly wrong. The enemy had been waiting for them. His unit had been overwhelmed. He should have been dead. A faint sound caught his attention. A weak, pained groan. Carter raised his rifle and followed the noise. His boots crunched over broken metal and alien bones. As he turned the corner of a shattered rock formation, he saw her. A Zarelian soldier lay slumped against a jagged boulder, her deep purple armor cracked and stained with blood. But as Carter stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. This was no ordinary soldier. Her face was marked with golden tattoos, a sign of Zarelian royalty. Her long, dark blue hair was tangled with dust and sweat. Even in her wounded state, she held herself with an air of command. Her eyes, piercing silver, locked onto his, filled with pain but also defiance. Carter hesitated. He had fought Zarelians before, but this was different. He recognized her face from intelligence reports. This was Queen Silara, the rightful ruler of the Zarelians, the one rumored to have been betrayed by her own people. She tried to lift her weapon, but her strength failed. The gun slipped from her fingers, clattering to the ground. She was helpless. Carter tightened his grip on his rifle. The smart thing would be to end this now. She was their enemy. If he let her live, she could rise to power again. She could lead another war against humanity. But instead of pulling the trigger, he lowered his weapon. "Why? Are you waiting?" Silara's voice was hoarse but sharp. "Kill me, human." Carter crouched beside her, reaching for the med pack strapped to his belt. "Not my style," he muttered. Silara frowned, confused. "You? Spare an enemy." He opened the pack and pulled out a small injector, pressing it against her arm. A dose of biogel flowed into her system, slowing her bleeding. "I don't kill wounded enemies," he said simply. Silara winced as the medicine took effect, but her gaze remained locked on him. "Kindness is a weakness," she whispered. Carter shook his head. "No, it's what makes us human." A strange silence fell between them. Silara, once the feared queen of a mighty empire, was now vulnerable, and yet Carter did not see a monster before him. He saw a warrior, betrayed and left to die by her own people. He glanced around. If the Dominion's forces were still searching for her, they would return soon. And if they found her alive, they would finish the job. Carter exhaled and made his decision. He reached down, lifting Silara onto his shoulder. "What are you doing?" she asked weakly. "Saving your life," he said. She let out a bitter chuckle, then winced in pain. "Foolish human. Yeah, I get that a lot." With careful steps, Carter carried her away from the battlefield. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if he was making a mistake. But something told him that saving Silara would change everything. The night was cold on the barren moon. Harsh winds blew across the rocky terrain, carrying the scent of smoke and blood. Sergeant James Carter moved quickly, carrying the wounded Queen Silara over his shoulder. His body ached from the weight, but he pushed forward. Somewhere in the distance, Zarelian patrols were searching. Their betrayal of Silara wasn't enough. They wanted her dead. If they found her, they wouldn't hesitate. And if they found Carter helping her, he would be executed on sight. Silara groaned softly. "You're wasting your strength, human." "Yeah." Carter adjusted his grip. "Well, I'd rather waste it than leave you to die." She let out a weak laugh. "Your people, they must call you a fool." Carter smirked. "You wouldn't be the first to say that." He finally reached a small cave, hidden between jagged cliffs. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. He stepped inside and carefully lowered Laura onto the rocky floor. She winced in pain, but didn't cry out. Carter pulled out his medpack again, setting up a small glow light to see better. Her armor was shattered in places, revealing deep wounds across her side and shoulder. The biogel he had given her earlier slowed the bleeding, but she still needed proper care. He reached for a sterilized bandage, but her hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "You should have left me," she said, her silver eyes sharp despite her pain. "Why did you save me?" Carter met her gaze. "Because it was the right thing to do." She scoffed. "A human warrior, speaking of honor." "Honor's got nothing to do with it," he replied, pulling free from her grip and beginning to clean her wounds. "You were betrayed by your own people. That's not a death you deserve." Laura fell silent, watching him as he worked. The warmth of his hands, the careful way he bandaged her injuries. It was unlike anything she had ever known. Among her kind, weakness was punished. No Xyrelian warrior would have stopped to save an enemy. Carter noticed her staring. "What? You are different," she muttered. "I get that a lot too." Laura's breathing steadied as the pain eased. Carter leaned back, satisfied with his work. The cave was dim, the shadows flickering against the rough stone walls. Outside, the wind howled, but for now, they were safe. Or so he thought. A distant explosion rumbled through the night. Carter's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his rifle and crawled to the cave entrance, scanning the horizon. In the distance, Xyrelian patrol ships hovered over the battlefield, searching for survivors. "We can't stay here long," he muttered. Laura struggled to sit up. "My people, they will not stop hunting me." Carter frowned. "So what's the plan then? Let them kill you." She narrowed her eyes. "I do not fear death." He sighed. "Look, I don't care how fearless you are. I didn't drag you across a war zone just so you could give up." Laura tilted her head, studying him. "Humans are strange." Carter smirked. "And you Xyrelians aren't." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then, Laura spoke again, her voice softer. "There is one place we can go." Carter turned to her. "Where?" "A hidden outpost, deep in the mountains." She hesitated. "Before my betrayal, it was loyal to me. If it still stands, they may help us." Carter considered this. A Xyrelian outpost was dangerous territory, but staying here was even worse. "All right," he said finally. "But if this is a trap, I swear." Laura smirked weakly. "You saved my life. Human, I owe you more than betrayal." Carter gave a short nod. "Then let's move." As he helped her to her feet, neither of them knew that this journey would change the fate of both their worlds. The journey through the Rocky Mountains was slow and painful. The cold winds howled against the cliffs, carrying the distant echoes of Xyrelian patrol ships searching for survivors. Sergeant James Carter tightened his grip on his rifle, scanning the dark sky. If they were spotted, they wouldn't stand a chance. Beside him, Queen Laura struggled to keep up. Though her wounds were healing, every step was a battle. Carter glanced at her, noticing the way she clenched her jaw, refusing to show weakness. "You okay?" he asked. "I do not need your concern, human," she replied, but her voice lacked the usual sharpness. Carter smirked. "Yeah, well, I wasn't asking." She shot him a glare, but there was no real anger in it. They walked for hours, moving through narrow paths and steep cliffs. Carter had to admit, Laura was tough. Most soldiers would have collapsed by now, but she kept going, refusing to ask for help. Finally, as they reached a small ledge overlooking the valley below, Carter decided they needed a break. He sat down on a flat rock and pulled out a ration pack, tearing it open. Laura hesitated before sitting a few feet away from him. Her silver eyes watched as he chewed on the dry, tasteless food. Carter noticed her staring. "Hungry." She lifted her chin. "I do not eat human food." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. Well, Unless you got a secret stash of alien snacks, this is all we've got." She sighed and reluctantly took the small food bar he handed her. She sniffed it, then took a cautious bite. Her expression remained unreadable as she chewed. Carter chuckled. "Not bad, huh?" She swallowed and gave him a sideways glance. "It tastes like metal." "Yeah," Carter said, taking another bite. "You get used to it." For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the wind. Then Silara spoke softly. "You are different from the humans I have fought before." Carter leaned back against the rock. "Yeah. How so?" "You do not act like a conqueror. You show kindness, even to an enemy." She hesitated, then added, "It is confusing." Carter sighed. "It's simple. We're not all the monsters your leaders told you we are." Silara looked down, her fingers tightening around the food wrapper. There was something in her expression, something troubled. Carter noticed. "All right, what's on your mind?" She hesitated, then spoke. "Do you know why my people turned against me?" Carter had heard rumors. "They called you a traitor." Silara's jaw clenched. "Yes, because I sought peace with your kind." Carter blinked. "Wait, you wanted peace?" She nodded. "The war between our people was not always this way. I tried to change things. I wanted to end the bloodshed. But my generals, they saw my ideas as weakness." She looked away, her voice bitter. "They betrayed me. They framed me as a traitor and took my throne." Carter let out a low whistle. "So they'd rather keep fighting than make peace." "Yes. The warlords who rule now see humanity as a threat that must be eliminated. To them, power is everything." She exhaled slowly. "When I refused to continue the war, they decided I was no longer fit to rule." Carter frowned. "That's why they're hunting you. They don't just want you dead. They want to erase you." Silara nodded. "If I die, there will be no one left to challenge their rule." Carter thought about this. If Silara had truly wanted peace, then her return to power could change everything. Maybe, just maybe, this war could end. "You said there's a loyal outpost ahead," Carter said. "If we make it there, what's next?" Silara looked at him, her silver eyes unreadable. "Then we fight." Carter grinned. "Now that sounds like a plan." She raised an eyebrow. "You would fight for a queen who is not your own." He shrugged. "I'd fight for what's right." Silara was silent for a long moment. Then, softly, she said, "Perhaps I was wrong about humans." Carter smirked. "You're just figuring that out now." She chuckled, just a small sound, but it was real. For the first time, the tension between them felt lighter. But their moment of peace didn't last. A sudden explosion shook the ground beneath them. Carter jumped to his feet, rifle ready. "What was that?" Silara's expression darkened. "They found us." In the distance, Zorelian ships were descending from the sky, their red lights glowing through the darkness. Carter tightened his grip on his weapon. "Guess break time's over." Silara stood beside him, her strength returning. "Then let us show them that we are not so easily broken." Carter grinned. "Now you're talking." As the enemy forces approached, Carter and Silara prepared for battle, side by side. The ground trembled as Zorelian ships descended from the sky, their red searchlights sweeping across the rocky terrain. The sharp hum of their engines echoed through the valley, a sign that death was coming. Sergeant James Carter gripped his rifle, scanning the enemy forces. Queen Silara stood beside him, her silver eyes burning with determination. Though she was still wounded, her warrior spirit remained unbroken. "They found us faster than I expected," Carter muttered. Silara narrowed her eyes. "They must have tracked my biosignature. The Dominion does not leave loose ends." Carter exhaled. "Well, lucky for us, I don't go down easy." The first Zorelian soldiers touched down, their armored boots hitting the rocky ground with heavy thuds. They moved in formation, weapons raised, their glowing visors scanning for movement. "Can you fight?" Carter asked. Celara straightened despite her injuries. Always. Carter smirked. Good. Let's give them a reason to regret coming here. With quick reflexes, he raised his rifle and fired. The first enemy soldier collapsed, his armor sparking from the impact. Before the others could react, Celara lunged forward, using the last of her strength to disarm a second soldier. She twisted his arm, grabbed his energy blade, and drove it through his chest. The battle had begun. Holding the line, the Zarelians outnumbered them, but Carter and Celara fought like cornered wolves. Carter took cover behind a boulder, firing carefully, making each shot count. His training as a soldier kept his hands steady and his mind sharp. Celara, despite her injuries, moved with deadly grace. Her blade flashed in the moonlight as she dodged, countered, and struck with precision. Even wounded, she was faster than most warriors. But the enemy kept coming. More ships landed, deploying reinforcements. Carter gritted his teeth. We need a new plan. We're running out of ground to fight on. Celara looked up at the cliffs. There is another way. Follow me. She sprinted toward a narrow path leading higher into the mountains. Carter covered her retreat, taking down 2 more enemies before dashing after her. Blaster fire rained down on them as the Zarelians gave chase. Rocks exploded, sending sharp debris flying in all directions. Carter turned mid-run and fired a grenade round from his rifle. The explosion sent several enemy soldiers flying, giving them a few extra seconds. Nice shot, Celara called. Carter grinned. I have my moments. They climbed higher, the path growing steeper. The cold wind howled, but Carter barely noticed. His only focus was keeping them both alive. The hidden refuge. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a narrow mountain pass. Celara led the way through the jagged rocks until, finally, they emerged into a hidden valley. Carter's eyes widened. Nestled between the cliffs was a small outpost. Celara breathed heavily. It's still here. The outpost was built into the rock, barely visible from above. A handful of Zarelian soldiers stood guard, their weapons ready. But as soon as they saw Celara, their eyes widened in shock. One of them, a tall warrior with red markings on his armor, stepped forward. His voice was filled with disbelief. My queen. Celara, though exhausted, stood tall. I have returned, and I bring an ally. She motioned to Carter. The Zarelian warrior frowned at Carter, but did not attack. Instead, he knelt before Celara, his fist pressed to his chest in respect. The true queen still lives, he said, his voice filled with emotion. Then there is still hope. Carter, catching his breath, smirked. Guess I don't have to shoot anyone. That's a nice change. Celara gave him a small, tired smile. For now. The other Zarelian warriors gathered, their eyes filled with respect and determination. They had been waiting for their queen's return. The war begins anew. Inside the outpost, Carter and Celara were led to a command chamber. The walls were lined with maps, weapons, and communication devices. It was a war room, one built by soldiers who refused to surrender. A Zarelian officer approached. My queen, we have heard of your betrayal. Many of us refused to believe it. We waited, hoping you would return. Celara's gaze was fierce. Then you have waited long enough. The Dominion must fall. The officer hesitated. But how? They are stronger than ever. Their fleets control every major system. Celara turned to Carter. With new allies. Carter raised an eyebrow. You're talking about humanity. She nodded. Yes. If humans and my people unite, we can end this war for both our worlds. Carter thought about it. He wasn't a politician. He was a soldier. But he knew one thing. If the Zarelian Dominion wasn't stopped, millions more would die. All right, he said, but getting humans to trust Zarelians won't be easy. They've seen too much war. Celara stepped closer. Then we give them a reason to believe. We fight together. Carter smirked. Well, I do like a good fight. Scylla extended her hand. Then let us change the fate of our people together. Carter looked at her, then shook her hand. It was a moment that would be remembered in history. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time, humanity would stand at the heart of it. Deep inside the hidden outpost, Sergeant James Carter and Queen Scylla stood before a gathering of Xyrelian warriors. These were the last loyalists, the ones who had refused to follow the warlords who had betrayed their queen. Their eyes burned with determination as they listened to Scylla speak. "I have returned," she declared, her voice strong despite the exhaustion in her body, "and I will not hide in the shadows any longer. The Dominion has ruled with fear for too long. That ends now." The warriors pounded their fists against their chests, a sign of loyalty. They were ready to fight. Carter crossed his arms. "All right, so we've got a bunch of angry rebels. That's a good start. But we still have a problem." Scylla turned to him. "What problem?" Carter looked around the room. "Weapons, numbers, ships. We don't have enough. Even if we fight with everything we've got, we can't win alone." A tall Xyrelian officer, the one with red markings on his armor, stepped forward. "There are still those within the Empire who remain loyal to you, my queen. If we reach them, they will join us." Scylla nodded. "Then we must make contact." Carter rubbed his chin. "And there's still the human side of things. You need my people to back you up." The room fell silent. The Xyrelians and humans had been enemies for years. Convincing Earth to join them wouldn't be easy. Scylla studied Carter. "Do you believe your leaders will listen?" Carter sighed. "I don't know, but if I can get a message out, I'll make them listen." The red-armored officer, named Varric, spoke again. "The Dominion controls most of our communication networks. If we send a message, they will intercept it." Scylla thought for a moment. Then her eyes lit up. "What about Archelaus Station?" Varric's expression changed. "You mean the abandoned relay station. It is deep in enemy territory." Scylla looked at Carter. "But if we reach it, we can send a message directly to Earth without interference." Carter smirked. "A crazy plan. I like it." The mission begins. The next morning, the team prepared for departure. A small stealth ship had been hidden in the valley, one of the last remaining loyalist vessels. It was old but fast enough to avoid detection. Carter strapped his rifle to his back as he walked up the ramp. "So, who's coming on this suicide mission?" Scylla stepped forward. "I will go." Varric saluted her. "My queen, you should stay here. If anything happens—" She raised a hand. "If I am to lead this rebellion, I must be part of it." Carter grinned. "That's what I like to hear." Varric sighed but nodded. "Then I will go as well." A few more warriors volunteered, and within minutes, the team was ready. As the ship lifted off, Carter stared out the window. The hidden base grew smaller below them. They were flying straight into danger. But Carter wouldn't have it any other way. A dangerous flight. The journey to Archelaus Station was tense. The station was located in Dominion-controlled space, surrounded by enemy patrols. Carter sat in the cockpit beside the pilot, checking the radar. Any sign of trouble? The pilot, a young Xyrelian named Kale, shook his head. "Not yet, but we must be careful. The Dominion watches this sector closely." Scylla stood behind them, arms crossed. "The station is old, but if the systems still work, we can send a secure message to Earth." Carter sighed. "Let's just hope the Dominion hasn't turned it into a trap." As they neared the station, Kale frowned. "Something is wrong." Carter leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Kale pointed at the radar. "No patrols. No activity. It is too quiet." Scylla's eyes narrowed. They should have at least one defense ship nearby. Carter exhaled. "Guess we're about to find out what's waiting for us." The ship slowed down, approaching the dark, lifeless station. The massive structure floated above a gas giant, its metal exterior covered in scars from past battles. Carter grabbed his gear. All right, let's move. The silent station. The airlock hissed open, and Carter led the way inside. The station was cold, dark, and silent. Dust floated in the air, untouched for years. Silara glanced around. The control room is this way. As they moved deeper, something felt off. The silence was too unnatural. Carter tightened his grip on his rifle. Stay alert. I don't like this. They reached the control room, a massive hall filled with old computers and flickering lights. Everything was still functional. Varric walked to a console and powered it up. The relay is intact. We can send a message. Carter activated the microphone. This is Sergeant James Carter of the United Earth Forces. If anyone can hear this, we need immediate support. We have an opportunity to end this war, but we can't do it alone. Humanity and Zarelians must fight together. Silara stepped beside him. To the leaders of Earth, I am Queen Silara, rightful ruler of Zarelia. I was betrayed by my own people for seeking peace. But now I ask for something greater. Not just peace, but unity. Carter nodded and sent the message. Let's hope they get it. But before anyone could respond, boom! A massive explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared. Kale ran in. We have company. Dominion ships, a whole fleet. Carter cursed. Guess they were waiting for us after all. Silara clenched her fists. We must fight our way out. Carter grinned. You read my mind. As enemy forces stormed the station, Carter and Silara stood side by side, ready for battle. The war had just begun. The walls of Archelaus Station shook violently as another explosion rocked the structure. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and alarms blared through the empty corridors. Sergeant James Carter steadied himself, gripping his rifle. Well, that didn't take long. Queen Silara stood beside him, her silver eyes burning with determination. Dominion forces had finally arrived, and they weren't here for negotiations. Kale, the pilot, sprinted into the room, breathless. Our ship is under attack. We must move. Now. Carter cursed under his breath. How many enemy ships? Cal's expression was grim. At least a dozen, and they've already boarded the station. Varric, the red-armored Zyrelian officer, activated his energy blade. Then we fight our way out. Silara nodded. Agreed. We must return to our people. If we die here, the rebellion dies with us. Carter smirked. All right then. Let's make these guys regret showing up. The fight begins. The doors to the control room slammed open, and Dominion shock troopers stormed inside, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Carter reacted instantly. He fired his rifle, hitting the first soldier square in the chest. The Dominion warrior collapsed, but more rushed in. Varric lunged forward, his energy blade flashing as he sliced through the nearest enemy. Silara grabbed a fallen trooper's blaster and joined the fight, her shots fast and precise. The battle was fierce. The Dominion troopers were highly trained, but Carter and his team fought like cornered wolves. The control room erupted with gunfire and flashing lights. A Dominion officer barked an order. Take the queen alive. Kill the human. Carter grinned. Guess I made an impression. He grabbed a grenade, pulled the pin, and tossed it toward the doorway. Boom! The explosion sent Dominion soldiers flying, giving them a brief moment to escape. Silara pointed toward a side corridor. This way. There's an emergency route to the hangar. Race to the ship. The team ran through the station, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. The walls shook as the Dominion ships bombarded the station from outside. Kale checked a screen on his wrist. Our ship is still intact, but it won't last much longer. Carter reloaded his rifle. Then we better move faster. As they reached the hangar, their stealth ship came into view, but standing between them and escape was a full squad of Dominion warriors, and at their center, a tall, armored figure. Carter narrowed his eyes. Who's that? Silara's face darkened. Commander Rithos. He was once my most loyal general. Rithos removed his helmet, revealing sharp predatory features. He looked at Silara with cold eyes. My queen, he said mockingly. I hoped the rumors were false. But here you are, fighting alongside a human. How disgraceful. Silara clenched her fists. You betrayed me, Rithos. You betrayed our people. Rithos smirked. No, I saved them. And now, I will finish what we started. He raised his energy blade and pointed it at Silara. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick. Carter stepped forward, his rifle aimed at Rithos. Yeah, see, that's not gonna happen. Rithos sneered. A human dares to challenge me. Carter grinned. Oh, I don't just challenge, I win. Final stand. Rithos lunged at Carter, his blade slicing through the air. Carter dodged, rolling to the side and firing. But Rithos was fast. He deflected the shots with his blade and struck again. Varric jumped in, blocking Rithos's attack with his own blade. The two Xerelians clashed in a blur of energy and steel. Sparks flew as their weapons met. Meanwhile, Silara and Kale engaged the other Dominion troopers, fighting with everything they had. Carter saw an opening. He grabbed a shock grenade from his belt, set it to maximum power, and tossed it toward Rithos. Crack! Blue electricity exploded around Rithos, sending him staggering backward. Varric took the chance and slashed across Rithos's chest. The traitor fell to his knees, gasping in pain. Silara stood over him, her expression cold. You chose the wrong side. Rithos. Rithos chuckled weakly. You think you've won. The station rumbled violently. Kale checked his scanner. The station is breaking apart. We must leave, now. Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed Silara's arm and pulled her toward the ship. Time to go, Your Highness. Varric and Kale covered their escape, firing at the last Dominion soldiers as they ran up the ship's ramp. The Great Escape. Inside the cockpit, Kale's fingers flew across the controls. Hang on. The ship's engines roared to life as they blasted out of the station. Behind them, Arcala Station crumbled, explosions tearing through its metal structure. Carter watched from the viewport as the station collapsed, taking Rithos and the remaining Dominion forces with it. Silara exhaled slowly. It's over. Carter shook his head. No, it's just beginning. A new alliance. They set course back to the hidden base, but something unexpected happened. A message flashed on the screen. An incoming transmission from Earth. Carter's heart pounded. He opened the message. A stern-faced human admiral appeared. Sergeant Carter, we received your transmission. If what you say is true, this war just changed. He paused, then added, we are ready to talk. Silara's eyes widened. They answered. Carter smirked. Told you I could make them listen. For the first time, there was hope. But war was coming. And this time, humanity and Xerelia would stand together. The great throne hall of Sci-Fi Prime was filled with the deep hum of alien voices. The Zarin Imperium, a mighty empire ruled by the war-hardened King Vornak, was about to make a historic trade agreement. But to the humans present, something felt off. Sergeant Ethan Cole stood tall among the delegation from Earth. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, but his keen instincts told him that today's deal was not just about resources or territory. Something more was at stake. King Vornak sat upon his massive obsidian throne, his piercing silver eyes scanning the humans with something between amusement and contempt. Beside him, his only daughter, Princess Alara, stood silently. She was strikingly beautiful, with shimmering blue skin and glowing violet eyes, but there was a cold detachment in her expression, like a prisoner waiting for a sentence. Vornak's deep voice rumbled through the hall. The Zarin Imperium seeks an alliance with Earth. In return for access to our advanced technology, I offer you a gift. He gestured toward Alara. The humans exchanged glances. A gift. Alara did not react. She remained still, hands folded before her, eyes cast downward. One of the human diplomats hesitated before speaking. "Your Majesty, you are offering your own daughter." Vornak smirked. "You misunderstand. Alara is flawed, infertile, of no use to my bloodline. If she can serve a purpose elsewhere, then so be it." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He had seen many political moves in his time as a soldier, but this was something else. Alara was being discarded. The human leaders hesitated, but the offer was too valuable to refuse. A diplomatic union with the Zyran could change the future of Earth. The deal was struck. Alara was given away, but none of them could have predicted what would happen next.